Hey, this is Seth Applebaum from Ghost Funk Orchestra, and you were watching Levylaukku.
Excellent. That was excellent.
That was good? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So obviously not in a record store right now picking out new stuff, so I'm just going to chat about some of the records that kind of influenced me. The first one I'll talk about, which is top of the mind because we are in Europe for the first time, is a record by the Poets of Rhythm from Germany called Discern, Define. That's an album that I discovered in high school. It was one of the first records I had ever heard from that whole scene in Munich. It definitely blew my mind wide open, that kind of heavy soul, heavy funk scene. I knew about what was going on in New York, but I didn't realize how much of a crossover there was with the German scene and how much they had been, in works with the Brooklyn crowd. It was a sound that has definitely carried through and has influenced me for all the years that I've been making music, and then especially up to the point where I started doing Ghost Funk Orchestra. And honestly, all the records from that crowd, the Whitefield Brothers, Carl Hector and the Malcoons, I've tried to keep up with them, but they keep changing their names and coming up with all these side projects. So I could have chosen any number of them, but Discern Define was the one that started it for me personally. The second record I want to talk about is more of a recent discovery for me. It took a long time to do it, but I finally started taking the plunge and getting into Brazilian music, partly because we had the honor of doing some tours with Os Mutantes. But one record that I have not been able to find a hard copy of, and even if I did, it'd be too expensive for me, is a record by an artist, Orlandivo, and the record is a self-titled called Orlandivo. It is so ahead of its time as far as I can tell. It features João Donato on the keyboard, so it's got that really psychedelic Brazilian 70s sound that I am still pretty new to, but once I started hearing it, it was like nothing I'd ever heard, but it felt so up my alley that I'm just diving all the way in. But this record in particular has a tune on it called Onde Anda Meu Amor. To me, sounds like the foundations of trip hop. The way it's performed and also the way it's mixed just sounds so futuristic, and it's a record that came out, I believe, in 1973, if I'm not mistaken. The internet will correct me, but blown away to hear that those sounds existed all the way back then, and just kind of take that avenue further into the Brazilian psychedelic tropicalia and MPB sound that, it's over the past year, I've finally started to take the plunge. And it's those that know it's an expensive plunge to take. So the third record I want to talk about is one I've listened to for a long time, but I only recently kind of rediscovered, and it's by David Axelrod. People have compared some of the work that I do to David Axelrod, which is probably the ultimate honor that I could have. I don't even know if I agree with it, but he's certainly in my brain whenever I'm writing arrangements. But there's a record called Earth Rot.
The foundations of the world.
A really interesting one. It's sort of a concept record about the destruction of Earth, the depletion of natural resources. It's just such a strange record. It's psychedelic in a different way than something like Songs of Innocence, and it leans really heavily on choral vocals, which I think is pretty amazing. I love hearing these really tight choral harmonies. There's all these cool sounds, like putting delays on vibraphones and things like that. There's still the Wrecking Crew playing. If you're familiar with the Wrecking Crew sound, it's all over this record, but there's just something about the way it's put together where there's also these spoken word passages, and it's maybe it's a little heavy-handed at times, but I do think it's a really interesting David Axelrod record that maybe doesn't get as much attention as it should. The samples mostly came from the other records, but I think Earth Rod is a very worthy record to check out if you're checking out David Axelrod. It's got its own thing going on. Kind of sounds nothing like his other records in a way. The fourth record is one that, kind of like the Orlandivo record, it's another one that I've just been searching for a long time, but cannot seem to track down. And it's by a group called the Mirettes. The record's called Whirlpool. It's a vocal group. They started their career as an early version of the Ikettes, as in Ike and Tina Turner Review. And I think they kind of got a raw deal from the organization, so they broke out and did their own thing, moved over to the Mirwood label and changed their name to the Mirettes. Mirwood, Mirettes. It's such a funky record. There's a song on it called Sister Watch Yourself. It's one of these like super funky, like late 60s, early 70s kind of soul tunes about the dangers of street life, which there's plenty of songs about it, but I think this is like such a great entry into that topic and that time. And I don't believe the Mirettes made much of a splash, you know, especially coming off of being the Ikettes, where you're kind of top of the pops. And then I don't know if there was any like shady business that maybe Ike Turner tried to keep them from succeeding, who knows. But it's definitely like a group that I think kind of went under the radar a bit, but it's a really cool record and I'm still looking for it. I could probably go on Discogs and just buy a copy, but I just want to find it in the wild. That's one that I need to find in the wild to feel complete. And then a fifth record, actually it's an EP by the band Antibalas, and it's called Government Magic. I was introduced to it when I believe I was a sophomore or a junior in high school. I was very new to Afrobeat. I hadn't gotten into Fela Kuti yet. I didn't know who he was yet, but I grew up 40 minutes away from New York City, where groups like Antibalas were starting to do their thing and play shows and make a name for themselves. So my friends who worked at a record store, they put Government Magic in my hands. They burned me a copy of it. That's a record that was hugely influential to me wanting to put together a big band, because of the way the horns really just kind of dominated the whole sound. Like the power of the horns resonated with me in a big way, and especially when I started going to see them live, it was like nothing I'd ever heard before. Through that band, I ended up learning about Fela and everything that was coming out of Nigeria that, you know, down the line influenced these bands in Brooklyn. And at the time there was also like the Chicago Afrobeat Orchestra and Phoenix, and all the major cities seemed to have an Afrobeat orchestra, but Antibalas always seemed to be kind of the gold standard for the 2000s Afrobeat revival. That record, Government Magic, was, I believe, the first one I heard from them, and it really kind of opened my mind to that whole scene, that style, and that method of delivering political messages. To hear music like this, the big bands and horns and everything, but it's as cutting and politically charged as anything, that was really eye-opening. To hear that there were styles of music that were funky and danceable in that kind of way, but they were also delivering very serious messages. So Antibalas' Government Magic is a very important record to me. This is Ghost Funk Orchestra's first time in Finland, and this is only the second date of our first European tour, so anyone that's at the show is very important to us. So thank you to Finland for the hospitality thus far, and we look forward to meeting more of you and hopefully coming back.